Rumcasters, we're back with another episode of the Rumcast, the podcast that talks about all things rum related with the people who love and shape it. I'm John Gulla, and on the other line with me, as always, is Will Hookinga. And Will, I know we were both recently had our second dose and are vaccinated now, so
That's right.
With that in mind, how's the rum life treating you lately?
It's good. I'm actually I'm getting ready to go on my first trip out of town, so about to pack my bags up later this evening. And
Nice.
I was just telling you I had my first haircut in person at a salon, so I'm thanking my wife for her year long of service in cutting my hair, but gratefully returning to the care of a professional. She did a great job, but you know, it's nice to go back in. I used to complain about getting haircuts, and now I'll always look forward to it. So,
did she use like a Flowbee or like one of those machines that like
no,
sucked it up? No,
she used a combination of clippers and scissors. So you know, it was pretty legit. She did a good job, but I know she's relieved at not having to spend an hour doing that. So
yeah, my wife does my hair also, by the way. Just so you know,
Yeah.
For those who may not have seen me, I don't have much hair left on my head at this point. I'm lacking in that department, as you might say. But
That's a good thing about it. You don't have to worry about that as much. So there you go. As far as rum goes, I'm doing well. And I wanted to ask you, have you ever had a moment where you feel like the heavens just kind of part and the rum gods smile upon you? Has that ever happened to you?
I think I get what you're saying, like where you hear like, you know, the angels, oh!
Exactly.
And
yeah.
just, you see, I think that's happened to me a couple of times, maybe in a store where like, you know, you
The
see
unexpected
a rum bottle.
find.
Exactly. The dusty sometimes, or just something you wanted. Yeah.
So I had that experience over the weekend. I was actually in preparation of this trip. I always, most of the time, my parents will dog sit for us, and they live about 2 hours south of me. And so I'll meet them halfway between their house and ours, pass our dog Penny off to them, and she'll go on her merry way with them. And since I was down about an hour south of Nashville, there's a liquor store I've mentioned on the podcast before called Elixir Spirits that is in a suburb of Nashville. It's about 45 minutes away, called Spring Hill. They've got a great rum selection. They have a really passionate owner who cares about getting interesting rums and stuff like that. So
Nice.
I always make it a point, if I'm down that way, to stop in Elixir. And so I do that. I go into the store just expecting to kind of browse, and I'm looking at the rum section, and a guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, are you into rum?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, I really am." And I had a mask on, so you know he couldn't see exactly what I looked like. And we start talking a little bit about rum, and I ask if they still have some transcontinental rum line releases in that I had seen, and he goes, "Wait a second, you're Will, right?" And what happened was this guy, his name's Andrew. He and I had been messaging via Facebook Messenger.
Okay.
We have some mutual friends here in Nashville in the burgeoning rum community, and we'd been trying to meet up at some point. I didn't recognize him, but he happened to recognize me. And
Maybe
so
by your voice? Is that?
I guess, yeah. I think he's listened to the podcast, so maybe it was the rich tones of my voice. But anyway, he was actually there, and another friend of mine named Alex from Friends of Rum Tennessee was on his way to the store, and they were going to do a little tasting of something very special. And again, keep in mind, I had no idea this was happening. I just happened to stop in. So this is what I'm getting at, where it felt like the rum gods were smiling upon me.
I see, yeah.
And then what they happened to be tasting that day was something that I was not expecting to be able to try, because it was so limited and quite high priced. You know, I knew it would take some sort of special set of circumstances for me to be able to try these rums.
Okay.
It was the Appleton Hearts collection.
Ah, yes.
So-
Now I'm insanely jealous because I've been wanting to try that. Yes.
Yeah, so I like many others, Appleton kind of did like a media blitz where they sent out these really nice sample bottles to, you know, several people throughout the online, you know, rum landscape. Not just online, but, you know, people who write
Yeah.
about rum and stuff like that. And so I saw the bottles and I was like, man, I want to try these so bad. And just some background for people, if you're not familiar with the Appleton Hearts collection. So this was a collaboration between Appleton and Vellier, where Appleton released 3 different 100% pot still distillates from varying years. There was
like vintages.
Yeah, there was a 1999, a 1995, and a 1994. So 21-year-old rum, 25-year-old rum, 26-year-old rum, all at cask strength. So this is the kind of thing that, like, if you're into Appleton rum, it's like you always wanted to try it like this, or at least I did,
Yeah.
because I've had, Appleton 21 and stuff like that, which is a wonderful rum, but it's a little on the lower ABV side.
Right.
I don't believe that one is 100% pot still. I know all the other, Appleton 8, Appleton 12 and stuff like that. It's a blend of pot and column. So getting this 100% pot still Appleton rum bottled at cask strength is like, and on top of that, 21-year-old, 25-year-old, 26-year-old, it's like, oh my God, like this is going to be an experience. And again, these were little sample bottles that were very generously shared with me during this tasting. So it was just a little bit of each one. So I'm not trying to pull away any definitive tasting notes or anything like that based on just this brief experience, this brief encounter with these rums. But all I can say is I did them in reverse order. So the 99, then the 95, then the 94. I had the 99. I was like, man, this is really good. I like this. I got to the 95 and it was like, went up like 3 more levels. Just like, oh my God, this is in the realm of like
best rum
so some of the best I've ever had.
Wow.
And 94 was right there with the 95 as well. I'd have to go back between, like, those two were in the same tier for me. I'd have to, kind of go back and compare them over multiple tastings and stuff like that to really sort out my feelings. But the point is that all my expectations for what the experience would be like with those rums was met and possibly exceeded. It just felt so special to be able to taste that. So I guess what I'm taking away from this and trying to communicate is, if you have a chance to try these rums, I'm sure maybe there's some bars out there that got their hands on some bottles, and maybe you'll be in a situation where you can pay a little more than you usually would to get, a glass of that at a rum bar or something like that. I would 100% do it.
So it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you can get a full bottle and you've got the money, don't even think about it. Like, just do it, because that's where I'm at with it. I mean, I don't know if I'm, if it's on the secondary market. I'm not really at a point in my life where I am going to spend $1,000 on a bottle of rum or anything like that. But if it's list price, store price, 100%, don't even think about it. But so that's what I'm still glowing from that experience. And I know you have a recent tasting that you want to share as well. So tell me about it.
I do. Before I get to that, though, hold on. I wanted to say, first of all, I haven't seen these in Florida at all yet.
Yeah.
Like, at all. So not even an opportunity. I think I want to remember there's one member of the Florida Rum Society. He actually has a video review channel, Jamay Will's Ready Set Rum.
Oh, I've seen Ready Set Rum. Yeah,
he may have them. Jamay, if you are listening, we may have to get together, because I want to say I remember you might have brought some of those back from Jamaica. And now that Will has tried them, this means I have to try them soon, or else I will just burn up of envy.
Yeah.
So, we got to find a way to do that. But what I was going to ask you about the Appleton is, for me, I've tried a good amount of the Appleton line, including up to Appleton Joy, which I enjoy.
Nice. See what you did there.
Yeah. But they all have a very kind of a distinct profile amongst even Jamaican rums. So
that kind of like Appleton signature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you find that in the Hearts collection? Did you find it there?
I did. And that was one of the things that was so special to me, because it was simultaneously, wow, I've never had Appleton like this, and at the same time, there's Appleton. This is distinctly, like, I taste that Appleton signature, but in a, like, surrounded by stuff I've never experienced before from this distillery. So that was like, that was where it felt just like everything kind of coming together in a really beautiful way, and that's what was so fun about it.
You had your
good question.
Please, sir, can I have some more?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right. Well, I have a re-rum, so
all right.
We can talk about my re-rum, but it pales in comparison to Appleton Hearts in terms of its rarity and, what would you say, special? Well, no, I like this rum. So let's start with what this is, and I'll give you some kind of clues as to what it is, and then I'll reveal. So this is an aged rum from South America.
Okay.
And it is just 40%, so it's a standard 40% release. It's no age statement, and it's roughly, I want to say, about $30 or so for the bottle. And it's a column still rum that I really find that we tend to talk a lot about some of the other, I don't want to even use the word styles of rum because that's problematic, and we talk about that, but we haven't shared too much, I think, in the Latin American tradition of rum.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't an intentional pick in that way, but I went back to it in my bar of bottles and was kind of like, you know what? I missed that one. So let me go back to that. And I really, really still enjoy it. It is, drumroll, Pampero Aniversario.
Oh, you told me about this. Wow, the color on that is insanely dark.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's added color, to be bluntly honest with you.
I mean, it has to be. It looks like the color of almost like Crucian blackstrap, kind of, where it's like...
but I think that's also
black.
Yeah, it is. But I think that's because of the bottle design and shape.
Okay.
What they've done is they put this like squatty bottle that almost feels like it's half. It almost looks like a 375 milliliter, but this is still a full 750.
All right.
And unless they're cheating us, I didn't measure, but because of its kind of compact, almost a spherical shape, I think that probably makes the rum look darker in the bottle. Although I will say, even in the glass, it's got a really dark color.
Yeah, it's like that, almost like Coca-Cola kind of.
Almost Coca-Cola is spot on, actually. Yes, but what I really enjoy about this rum is it's a rum that is, for a column distilled, it's got a lot of flavor. Reminds me a little bit of Cuban rums that I've had, or Dominican rums in the same, again, tradition. It reminds me, interestingly, less so of another Venezuelan rum, which you've talked about, which is Santa Teresa.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So although I think there's some similarities there, I actually greatly prefer this one to the Santa Teresa.
Interesting.
And I like the profile. Something in the profile and the balance of this is really, really nice. It's got a little bit of a buttery kind of nose, and in the taste as well. But then it's also got a really nice balance of spice, a little bit of chocolate, and I think coffee is what I get from this. A little coffee undertone.
Do you know if it's sweetened at all?
So there's been a lot online, and I did a little bit of research to try to find out, to see if there's been any definitive. There's been people who say, no, it's not. And even in hydrometer tests have not found it above 4... is it grams per liter or whatever it is? Yeah. So the 4 grams per liter was the hydrometer test, which most people, again, we wade into this conversation of what that means, but a lot of people would say that that's possible, just barrel residual stuff, and doesn't necessarily indicate that added sugar is, but it could have been. The point there is, if it has been sugar, it has been added, it's not a lot.
So it doesn't come off to you as being overly sweet.
Correct, which I don't really enjoy. Very sweet. Now, I would say it's sweeter than Santa Teresa. And I believe for sure Santa Teresa, if we remember, recall them or you saying, or both of them saying they do not add any sugar to that one.
Yeah, and that's another brand that I've read different things about, and I don't really. It's always tasted a little bit sweet, but not offensively so to me. So that's interesting though, because that rum, which we've talked about before, because it's one that I think a lot of people experience when they're coming into rum early on, and it kind of pulls them in. And I had that experience of being somewhat underwhelmed the first time I had it, and then my opinion improving a little bit over time. Still not something that totally blows me away, but sure. I see what the appeal is. So it's interesting that you have it kind of ahead of that one in that department.
Yeah, I really enjoy this one, and I think as a South American rum, it's one that people should try if they haven't done so already. Going into it, knowing it's on the sweeter side if you're used to the Barbados rums or Jamaicans or Martiniques, because there may be a little bit of added sugar in there. I wish we knew that a little bit more transparently. That would be nice. We'll be honest, but the point there is it's still not a dessert rum. This is not the Diplomatico Reserva Exclusiva.
It's interesting because if I was just judging it based on how it looked, that would have been my expectation, just because it's so dark.
Yeah.
So I'll have to. I'm intrigued now. I'll have to try that sometime and kind of see what I think about it.
Yeah, I really would recommend this, and it's absolutely a world apart from, again, the rest of the Caribbean kind of rum profile or others, but it's worthwhile to investigate as a column distilled quality product. I really do think this is a quality product they're putting together, and people will enjoy it.
Well, with that said, we should probably talk about what's coming up on the show today. So we had a little bit of a curveball in that we had an interview scheduled with a Caribbean rum producer that I won't reveal quite yet because the interview is still going to happen, but it got moved at the last minute. So kind of threw our publishing schedule off a little bit. And we wanted to still be able to share some kind of content featuring rum producers with you all this week, rather than just having us ramble on about rum ourselves for another hour. So I had just done a live stream recently for Zavvi.co, which was, I've been doing this kind of series as kind of a collaboration between that and my website, American Rum Report, these series of what I call roundtable discussions. So I get different distillers or brands from across the US and put them in a room together. A virtual room, of course, and there's some topic and we just talk about it. And, you get to hear kind of distillers, producers, founders, discussing this stuff together. It's been really fun. And we just did one just a couple of weeks ago that was with 3 producers who are all growing their own sugarcane to make rum. And I kind of picked producers from all across the country and territories as well, because one of the producers I've mentioned on the show before, and actually Frank Ward mentioned on his interview in the Rumcast. So there's a little bit of Rumcast connection here. Frank Ward consulted at this distillery, San Juan Artisan Distillers in Puerto Rico. Pepe Alvarez, the founder there, came on. Erik Vonk from Richland Rum in Georgia came on, and Steve Jefferson from Kuleana Rum Works in Hawaii, the Big Island, which may be one that people, I actually think people are probably less familiar with all of these producers, given that they're based in the U.S., but Kuleana is kind of in the vein of Kohana, which we spoke about on a previous episode. I don't want to, conflate them as the same because they're different distilleries, but doing a kind of similar thing with kind of heirloom Hawaiian cane varietals and stuff like that. They have different approaches, but anyway, I got them in a room and I really just wanted to get to the crux of what is it like, because it's already hard enough to start any kind of craft distillery in the US. Then when you want to layer on top of that, starting a rum distillery in the US, that's another challenge, just because, rum is misunderstood. It's not as popular of a spirit as something like whiskey. And then you layer on top of that, these guys all also wanted to grow sugarcane and run farms on top of that, some of which are in regions like Georgia, for example, which is a place that I think most people don't even realize that sugarcane can grow there. And it really is on kind of the northern extreme of being able to grow sugarcane. And Erik gets into that and how they deal with it and everything. But I thought it was really interesting just to hear about like the challenges, the different perspectives that these guys have growing this unique type of rum. They're not growing the rum, they grow the sugarcane and use it to make rum.
In a roundabout way.
Yeah, exactly. It's as close as you can get to growing rum, I would suppose. So it's really, I really enjoyed getting to hear them ask each other questions and stuff like that. And so what we did was I took the audio from that live stream and chopped it up into a podcast episode. So I think, you can expect from it something similar to how our interviews usually go, with only the sad reality that it was just me doing the interviewing. And so you don't get John's excellent questions. And of course, no rapid fire, since John was not there to do it. So that is the one downside. You're kind of stuck with me for this interview. But I certainly learned a lot from it. And I think, especially if you're, going to be in any of these areas anytime soon, Hawaii, the Southeast, or Puerto Rico, this is, a great way to kind of learn about what these distilleries are doing.
Yeah, I love the Zavi.co sessions, and I think you guys do a wonderful job with that. I hadn't got to see this one or listen to this one, so I'm excited to be a listener.
I hope I don't disappoint you now.
I hope so too. I'm expecting a lot here, and it'll be fun for me to listen to, and I think fun for our listeners to also. All right, well, I'm excited to hear it. Let's do it. If you're listening to our show right now, there are 6 words about rum that are likely to catch your eye: single barrel, cask strength, and no additives. Those 6 words are the whole premise of the single cask rum releases from Holmes Key, the sponsor for this episode of the Rumcast. Holmes Key seeks out the world's best rums and releases them unadulterated and at cask strength in limited editions. Check out their website at holmeskey.com to learn more about their new 2021 releases, distilled at places like Foursquare in Barbados, Demerara Distillers in Guyana, Travelers Liquors in Belize, and Clarendon Distillery in Jamaica. Also, you'll definitely want to stay tuned for more exciting 2021 releases coming up soon. You can find out more at Holmes Key, that's HOLMESCAY.com. Now back to the show.
The first thing, I alluded a little bit to just how unique, your situations are. Not a lot of people doing what you're doing. I'd love for each of you to kind of give some brief background on what pushed you to do this in the first place, to start your distillery and to grow sugarcane and use that for making rum. So, Steve, maybe I'll pick on you up first if you want to jump in and give us the backstory.
Yeah, great. Again, thanks a lot. This is super exciting for us. For us, it started on a complete accident, if you will. I mean, we had no idea. So we were sailing around in the Caribbean. We'd left Hawaii in 2006, when we figured the housing market was going to crash, and we didn't want to get caught in a crash in Hawaii because it's not that fun. So we were fortunate enough to have just enough money to buy a sailboat and squeak out of there. And so it was a big risk. We had a 1 and 3-year-old, and we were just sailing around in the Caribbean. And one day we went up to Martinique, and we heard there was a sugarcane farm up there, and we thought, oh, that's just like home. And so we went up there, and we heard they're serving rum. So we're like, okay, cool. And we made our way up there, and it was beautiful. And we, when you're living on a boat, you want to live on a house. When you're living in a house, you want to live on a boat. So we're looking at this going, oh my gosh, this is where we want to settle, in a place just like this.
Right.
The farm was beautiful. And then it was DePauw's Distillery, if anyone's ever been there. And we were just sort of struck with how beautiful it was. And it's very similar to Hawaii. And then we tried the rum, and I was blown away. I'd never had rum with that much sort of character and flavor before. And that was rum agricole, which, as everybody knows, it's rum made from fresh sugarcane juice. And I was just, wow, what is this? And within 5 minutes, my wife and I looked at each other and said, we got to move back to Hawaii and start this, because this is unbelievable. And that's basically how we got started.
Excellent. Pepe, why don't you jump in and tell us how San Juan Artisan Distillers and then that big field of sugarcane you have behind it came to be?
Sure. Thank you, Will. Thanks again for getting this together. Well, our story is very similar to Steve. I've been a landscaper all my life. I got out of high school in '76, and there was a horrible economic depression in the island. I couldn't find a job anywhere. I needed a day job, and I would study at night. I had worked 2 summer jobs previously as a landscaper, gardener. It was a perfect fit for me. I grew up in front of the ocean in Santurce in Puerto Rico on the beach. And basically, all I did since I was 8 was surf and do water sports and be in the water all day long. So I got into landscaping because I could go surf whenever the waves were good and shut the shop down, and I could go surfing. So I grew up in that and started the landscaping business. And one thing led to another. A lot of people started calling, and they needed landscaping services, and the business grew incredibly. I bought one farm, then another farm, then another farm. All of a sudden, I didn't have any time to surf anymore. So about 10 years, I did that for about 35 years. And it was a blessing. I never imagined that, a surfer from Ocean Park, would get so far. So, all of a sudden, the economy in Puerto Rico in 2008 with the bank recession all over the world, Puerto Rico has been depressed economically for a while, and there was no work. So I needed to reinvent myself and do something different, and I was looking for something fun to do, and something that would stir passion in me and do something special. And I looked at different alternatives, and I traveled to Martinique, as Steve did, and I did
There's a trend happening here.
Route to Rome that they have, which is amazing. And my wife and I visited about 5 or 6 distilleries in 5 or 6 days. We stayed there, and we stayed at this little beautiful boutique hotel that was owned by one of the distillery owners that I had contacted, the people from Nissan, who make incredible rum.
Yeah, very good.
He referred me to other. We were just window shopping and steering an idea. And we fell in love with the concept and saw the potential that this had in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico being so well known and so famous worldwide for its rums, and in the Caribbean, that it felt like a perfect fit to create a special distillery that produced something similar to what we had experienced, the same as Steve did in Martinique. And it would be something unique. We wouldn't be coming into this big market that has traditional molasses produced rums. It would be a very difficult to compete in that world. So having the experience that I had with the landscaping business that I grew plants, sugar, palm trees, and we produced everything. And sugarcane is a gramínea, is from the family of the grass family. So I had been growing grass for 30 years, and I thought it would be similar. How wrong was I? It's a totally different animal. It's affected by wind, by excess water, by this, by that. But sugarcane, you basically mow like a sod, and it grows back up. It's part family of the bamboo family as well, which are gramíneas as well. So I decided to go forward with it and start to reinvent myself, and started substituting the planting of the sugarcane, of our grass, our sod, and our plants, because there was no business going on with sugarcane. And little by little started assembling the distillery, and different opportunities surged. That distillery that was available, owned by a French company, spirits company in Trinidad, became available. And it was a complete French distillery that had these amazing Chavignac pot stills, 3 of them, and a bunch of tanks and fermenters and everything. So I basically flew down there, was able to buy everything, packed everything, loaded everything in a truck, and sent everything to Puerto Rico, and started assembling the distillery. And it's been basically a lot of work. I never imagined I'd be working as hard at this point in my life 10 years later, but we're having more fun than ever, and it's really incredible.
Are you getting any surfing in these days?
I have 2 longboards in my garage, and last time I went surfing, I almost got drowned. So my family said, "We think you should take it easy with the surfing.
Stick to the rum. Stick to the rum.
We don't want to lose it yet."
Erik, so I think you've actually been doing this the longest out of everyone. Richland, did you start in like the late 90s? Am I remembering correctly?
1999. Yep.
So it's also interesting, just because I think when people think about sugarcane, they think about tropical locations. I think Hawaii and Puerto Rico, people see it fitting in there. People don't realize as much, I think, places like Georgia, where sugarcane has grown for a long time. So how did you put that together with rum? How did it all get started?
As you know, I grew up in Holland, and had a grandfather, my mom's dad, had traveled around the world in search of good rums. He had this huge collection of rums from all around the world, and with one thing in common: they were all agricoles. They were all made from fresh cane. And as an impressionable teenager, he explained that that way you get a very different product than when you make rum from molasses. And that always left me with an idea that, hey, if there's ever an opportunity to grow some cane, I'm going to do it and make rum. And so many decades passed, and all of a sudden I found myself living in Atlanta, Georgia. And even after a number of years living in Atlanta, I had no clue that Georgia, the southern part of the state, had ever produced rum. And one day, driving here in this area, southern Georgia, I saw there was a little stand along the road and a guy selling sugarcane syrup. And I was driving by and I thought, sugarcane syrup. And all of a sudden, I said, sugarcane syrup. I pulled the unit
Wait a second, yeah.
and went to him and said, hey, sugarcane, where do you get that? And right behind this guy, there's this patch of sugarcane. And he looks like me, like, oh, there's this guy, probably from the big city. And he goes, pointing at the sugarcane behind him. So that's how I found out that southern Georgia, it's as far north as you can grow cane, but it does. Some varieties do actually very well here. And what has been interesting is that I found out later that the varieties that do well here in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, some of them have been introduced by Dutch immigrants from Indonesia in
fascinating.
the 1800s. And there's a variety that I now grow called POJ. And a lot of people always ask, what POJ, what does that stand for? It's actually Dutch. Proefstation Oost-Java, testing station Eastern Java.
Wow.
And that was a variety that was developed there, taken by Dutch immigrants here to southern Georgia, and it has spread all over the southern part of the southeastern states. That's how it...
I love that. It's interesting because I spent a lot of my childhood in North Alabama, and there's a similar dynamic where you go to the southern part of the state and you'll see things like people selling sugarcane syrup or having little patches of sugarcane. But I was totally unaware of all of that being in the north part of the state. So yeah, it's kind of fascinating how there's little traces of that kind of throughout the Southeast if you know where to look. So I want to give everyone a little bit of a sense of what the sugarcane production looks like for each of you. I've pulled up some pictures, but I'd love if you could just kind of give people a sense of where your farms are relative to your distillery, how much sugarcane you're growing, and what production kind of looks like throughout the calendar year for you.
Yeah, be happy to. The distillery is in a small town called Richland. The town has been named after the brand, right? That's the other way.
You get the other way around.
But the farm is about 5 miles outside Richland. We have a larger farm there, but we grow about 300 acres in cane.
Wow.
Primarily POJ and some varieties that go back to what is called Georgia red or purple ribbon varieties. The yields are not very good. As far as that's concerned, I'm going to be very jealous of what Steve and Pepe are going to share with us. But because of the climate environment, we're way north of the tropics, we can harvest once a year. Usually we start around Thanksgiving, late November.
Okay.
And into mid-December. Late December, early January, we can have frost. It doesn't happen every year, but we can have frost. And as we all know, frost kills sugarcane instantly. We usually try to get everything in by early December and have therefore a very different rhythm than sugarcane growers and rum makers have in a tropical environment where you can just harvest as you need and continue to have work year round.
Right.
We have to do everything, condense everything in one harvest season, crush everything, which is a monumental task in just a handful of weeks. And then we condense it to syrup. We heat it up and let water evaporate until we are at about 80 bricks or so in sugar content. And that's it, without any additives or anything else. It's just heated and condensed to syrup. And it's the syrup that we store throughout the year and deplete until the next harvest season. The yields are poor. We produce about a barrel and a half or so out of an acre.
Wow.
So you're looking at 400-ish, 450 barrels of rum out of what we grow.
Wow. And when you talk about the yields, I know obviously you're working on a condensed calendar. So that kind of puts a limit on how much you can get out. Is the environment you're growing in, does it also diminish like the amount of juice you would expect from the cane as well?
Yes, the cane doesn't get as tall.
Okay.
We maybe 8 to 10 feet is as much as we get. In tropical areas, there can be much more. Also, the size of the stalk remains limited. By the way, we usually plant in August, September. Okay. Just enough time for the planted stalk to develop roots. And then by the cold season, it stops growing, of course. Whatever has been sprouted out, like small sprouts like you see in the picture, sometimes freezes, but the roots will survive. And then as soon as the temperatures go up and the soil gets warmer in February, March, it grows. So you have an about 14 months growing season like you have in the tropics. The number of gallons per acre, it would be far less than you would see in tropical areas. I would say we yield about 25 to 3,000 gallons per acre. But the sugar content is high. It's a very sweet, high sugar environment. I've had a lot of support from the USDA. They have a station in Louisiana. Where they have a couple of agronomists who are specialized in sugarcane. And the interaction with them over the years, over the decades, has been very intensive. We've had a lot of help from them. We've seen comparative tables in varieties and in regions, and seen that the region where we're in, running from Louisiana up to basically into South Carolina along the coast, most varieties tend to have relatively high sugar content.
Well, Steve, I'd love to go to you next. Give us kind of the lay of the land of what things look like for you at Kuleana and in terms of your sugarcane production.
Okay, great. We're on the northern tip of the Big Island. So in this photo here, you can actually...
This is I just like every time I see this photo, it looks like made up or something that's not real with the ocean.
It feels
right
made
back
up,
there.
to be honest. Every morning, when you show up, it's like, I don't go there every morning, but every morning that I do go there, it's kind of a magical feeling.
Yeah.
So this is on the very northern tip of the Big Island. So this just barely off to the right by that clump of sugarcane off to the right. If you go out to the ocean, that's Upolu Point. So that's the northern tip of the Big Island. Okay. And that island you see in the background is Maui. And that's the volcano Haleakala. And so we're at the closest point to Maui. So it's just a gorgeous view. And because we're on the point, we actually have probably around 250-degree view of the ocean.
Wow.
And so it's really cool. So to your right and your left are also ocean views. And this is old sugarcane land. This was planted, they started planting around mid 1800s. And then it was a sugarcane farm for Kohala Sugar Company until 1975 when it shut down.
Okay.
And the very last commercial sugar left Hawaii in 2016. It shut down on Maui across the way there. And so basically between 75 and 2016, it didn't make sense to grow sugar on the Big Island anymore. And of course, we hatched this idea in 2007 and started basically learning how to make rum, came back to Hawaii, bought a little teeny still, and we're literally cutting sugarcane from the side of the road from leftover pieces of, because great swaths of the island were harvested in sugarcane. Mm-hmm. And so we would take it and we'd have names like Pepe Feral or Hamakua Wild and we just literally like grabbing whatever sugarcane was growing on the side of the road and crushing it and making rum with it, trying to figure out what we're doing. And then we heard about this guy that was getting his PhD, who was also from Maui, and he's getting his PhD in the agriculture. It's called the Hawaiian Field System. And what we basically learned was a couple of things. One is that sugarcane started in Papua New Guinea 10,000 years ago, that the Polynesians and the Micronesians before them were spreading it around the Pacific Ocean for at least 3,000 years and taking it with them wherever they went as they would settle new islands. And that most interestingly for us, 1,000 years ago, the first Polynesian wayfinders discovered and settled Hawaii and brought with them probably 2 or 3 varieties of sugarcane with them, most likely from Tahiti, along with other plants and some animals. And they basically settled what is now Hawaii. And from those 2 or 3 varieties, over about 800 years in complete isolation, they developed about 40 different varieties between 34 and 40. And when we learned that, we had already committed to making rum agricole from fresh juice. And there's a good picture of it.
Yeah, some of the varieties. Yeah,
that's about 10 or 11 varieties. And you could see, what would happen is they would mutate. And obviously these are beautiful. And so when they mutated, they said, oh my gosh, that's gorgeous. And then they would cut it, isolate it, let it grow into its own plant, and then, come up with stories and uses for it. We call it mo'olelo in Hawaii. And it became culturally, significant plants. And there was this huge, super successful field system happening, if you will, while the Europeans are in the Dark Ages, Polynesia is thriving. And this was all sort of deduced via DNA. And so he ended up getting his PhD at Stanford from what he learned. But we couldn't believe what a good gift this was, because now instead of making, rum from just some sugarcane, we realized that this is actually indigenous plants to Hawaii that are unique only in Hawaii. And to our great, and this is a really good group, because I think all of us sort of are coming from the same place where we just want rum to be incredible. And we all had our own separate experiences with it. And we're just like, we've got to, really elevate rum. So that's what I'm super proud of this group for doing. And there's another company I saw, I think it's Tyler from Kohana.
Yep.
Coincidentally, they were basically doing the same thing that we were. And they came up with virtually the same idea. So they're also growing these same varieties of sugarcane on Oahu, and they're making rum agricole as well. And it's funny because we did the farm, we did the distillery, and we did the restaurant out of pure ignorance. We just assumed you had to have all those things if you wanted to have a really good rum. And then after we get started, we realized that's taking on a whole lot. You don't really need to do all those things off the get-go. But it didn't matter, because we were so excited about really just trying to make this, world-class spirit, that we did everything that we thought we should do. And it turns out it's obviously quite a bit of work, but it's also a lot of fun. And it's really fun for people in Hawaii, because this is another way that we get to really share something that's truly uniquely Hawaiian. I mean, these are literally the plants that helped form the culture of Hawaii, and we get to share it with the rest of the world. And so, that's what's super fun for us about this.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to a lot of what you guys are saying, and we're already getting some good questions in. But first, Pepe, I want to give people kind of a snapshot of what things look like for you guys down in San Juan. So give us the overview of kind of what production looks like, your sugarcane production, where it is relative to the distillery, and what does it look like throughout the calendar year for you in terms of harvesting and stuff like that.
Sure, thank you. Well, we started our project in around 2010, started to collect Puerto Rican heirloom varietals that were developed in Puerto Rico during the Puerto Rican heyday sugarcane production. Puerto Rico had over 350,000 acres of sugarcane planted. There were over 25 sugarcane mills throughout the island. There was a train that transported sugarcane from not only the plantation and mill owners, but there were other plantation owners that produced the sugarcane. And the train would stop in their farm and they would load it, and then it was carried over to the mill. After Puerto Rico was a 5th largest producer of sugarcane in the world. And every family in Puerto Rico was touched by this tradition, by the history of sugarcane. Every family in Puerto Rico was touched by it. It was the most important thing that was going on in the island at the moment. Puerto Rico was agricultural based. We produced tobacco, coffee, sugarcane was the main crop, and it was really, really big. Puerto Rico got to a point where it couldn't compete any longer with producers from much larger countries and that didn't have the standards of a U.S. territory. Puerto Rico became a U.S. territory in 1898. And so we had, by having to comply with all the regulations and rules and on all that, it simply was impossible to compete. So little by little, the industry started to die, and it was impossible to compete till it disappeared in the early 90s.
And just to jump in real quick, if anyone goes to visit your distillery, you have this really cool little area with all these photos of kind of like the history of sugarcane in Puerto Rico. I remember you showed me when I visited a little over a year ago. It's really extraordinary just to see all of that history, just the pictures of what used to be there, right there at the place that's now, trying to bring sugarcane back a little bit.
One of our main motivators of this project is to be able to show what the sugarcane industry was represented in Puerto Rico, and that is intertwined with our more contemporary rum production. So we're marrying tradition with rum production in a recent contemporary story. And basically, we were able to rescue 20 stalks of sugarcane of Puerto Rican varietals. They were all numbered. And one of them was the one that we're promoting and developing the most right now. By chance, Erik, it's also and Steve, it's a red sugarcane, and it was the last variety developed in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has an amazing agriculture university in Mayagüez, and in the University of Rio Piedras, the University of Puerto Rico had a rum experimental plant. So there was a university program where you could go study how to make rum. That was shut down also after the sugarcane industry declined and disappeared. But there was so much incredible scientific development of varieties because it was a big industry. So they were creating more resistant varieties that had less fiber, had more juice. And basically, they all evolved from the original Puerto Rican varieties that were imported originally in this part of the world. They came from Portugal. So anyway, we basically rescued from almost extinction because there was this program that 40 acres were saved for future generations to be able to keep this history of these 50, 60, 80 varieties of sugarcane that had been developed throughout Puerto Rico's sugarcane era. And that project was abandoned and everything was dying out. So we got there just on time and were able to rescue 5 stalks of cane of 5 different varieties. And we planted basically 80 feet with 5 stalks of sugarcane or 50 feet. And each line had their little sign with a number of the variety, the Puerto Rican varietal number. And from that, we propagated that and created a third of an acre of the 5 together. Then we converted that into 3 acres, and then that converted itself into 7 or 10 acres. Then we were able to plant up to 80 acres, which was the most we've ever had.
Pepe, how many acres are right there behind the distillery? Because if I remember correctly, I think you have multiple places where you're growing it, or maybe I'm wrong. Is it all right there at the distillery?
Yeah, we own a 14-acre farm, which is our property. It was one of our farms we bought in the early 90s. And I decided to create our home base for the distillery here. So we have a fenced 4-acre area, which is the distillery, our aging warehouses, our offices, and our La Casa de Pepón, which is our little gift shop and our little visitor center that we've created. And it's basically the original Puerto Rican house made of cement and simple, but it's quite nice. Basically, this is like a destination, and we have 8 acres of sugarcane planted here. So whoever visits is able to walk the 8 acres of sugarcane. They can cut sugarcane. They can see how it's milled here in our facilities. And then we have another 100 acres that are planted about 10 minutes from here in the town of Vega Baja, where we've propagated and planted those 80 acres of sugarcane. We used to have sod there planted. As I mentioned before, we had the landscaping business, and we've been eliminating the sod and planting the sugarcane. So basically, we cultivate our sugarcane. Our growing period is about 8 to 10 months. Our normal cycle for sugarcane for sugar would be maybe 12 months, 14 months. So we shorten the length because we don't want the bricks of the sugarcane juice to be in excess of what it should be. Usually it's between 15 and 18% bricks, because we've noticed that yeast in high intensity sugars, like the normal bricks for sugarcane cultivation for making sugar would be anywhere around 20, 22, 23, 24 bricks of sugar. But yeast won't work well because there's lots of hidden sugars in there. There's other types of sugars that are hidden in there. And the yeast you'll have a fermentation. So our cycle is around 8 to 10 months, and we aim at 18% sugar or 18 bricks. And our yeast work wonderfully fine. So we get a proper fermentation. And then basically we it's all distilled in our pot stills. And we have a dirty pot still, which is a pot still where we do our first distillation. And then we have our clean pot still where we do our second distillation. And that basically it's an incredible aromatic product, has a completely different taste than from molasses distillation. Oh. And basically that's it.
You guys have all spoken a little bit to the challenges that are unique to having this kind of operation, where you're not only a distillery, you're also running a farm. Obviously, there are factors of running a farm that are beyond your control, weather, nature, etc. Well, what have kind of been the biggest challenges for each of you, or learning curves maybe that have come with not only running the distillery, but growing sugarcane and having to know, when you need juice or when you need syrup. And it seems like this whole logistical, I don't want to say nightmare because that sounds bad, but it seems like a monumental logistical challenge to me. And I'm curious from your perspectives, what have been kind of the biggest challenges?
It's an extremely difficult business. And we were to inaugurate our project in December of 2017. And we were slammed by Hurricane Maria, the worst hurricane that has hit Puerto Rico in the last 70 years.
Right.
And my crop, we had 80 to 100 acres ready, and it was total loss. We completely lost everything. We're surrounded by a river that runs around this specific farm, which we selected because it was this specific farm had produced the highest yields because it's like a peninsula surrounded by two rivers, and it's impacted by fresh water from the soil from the side. So this specific farm was like the most extraordinary place to grow sugarcane that we could find in the island. And by coincidence, we already had 45 acres of that farm rented, which is where we used to grow our plants and our sod. So we basically planted everything, and the river overflowed, and we hadn't seen a flood. This was a flood of 100 years. Everything was basically completely destroyed. So we were really shaken economically, emotionally.
Yeah.
We went out there, it was like they had dropped the bomb. And not only us, but everywhere you looked in Puerto Rico, because the hurricane ran over Puerto Rico through the middle of it, and it basically ran over us. And it was really devastating. So we had, we confronted the situation of either we, go forward with this. Is this worth continuing? And after a couple of weeks, we forgot everything about the hurricane and started cleaning up and replanting and collecting whatever we could salvage. So we were able to salvage some of the cane and milled, and that's the product that we bottled now that we just launched our first edition of a 24 months age rompepong, which is the first ron agrícola in Puerto Rico that has ever been made. and we made 800 bottles out of it, and they're all numbered and signed. So we're very proud of this. And anyway, we're planting and continuing and going forward. Having been a farmer all my life, I can tell you that farmer's life is extremely unpredictable. There's, you don't know where you're going to get an extreme drought, or extreme rain, or a storm, or a plague of insects, or it is a challenge. But we feel confident that we're going to have a good run for the next dozen of years or so, and that we'll be full sail ahead.
Absolutely. Steve, I know you looked like you were going to jump in there earlier, just speaking to kind of the biggest challenges or learning curves that you guys have experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give Erik some time too, because I think we've been talking quite a bit. But
yeah, we can't forget about Erik.
Just real quickly, it's a good point that Pepe makes. Is these farms, at least it sounds like in everybody's case, didn't exist. There wasn't just, you don't just jump into a sugarcane industry, and then the scale of which we're doing it was so different than the industries that were before us in Hawaii. These massive scales of, hundreds and thousands of workers all over the island were growing sugarcane, and then we're coming back with this super boutique. It's almost oxymoronical for people. They didn't even understand, like, why would you buy land on the ocean to go plant a crop that has virtually no cultural or economic value anymore. And so it's for us, it started with 650 1-gallon pots in our yard in order to get enough starts to grow, and it's very iterative. 18 stalks gets 650 pots, gets eventually 2 acres, gets eventually, 20 acres, and you have to keep scaling up in order to actually to get this going. And so it's kind of interesting, and you learn a lot about the plants when you do it. You really begin to enjoy the plants as an ingredient. And for us, we harvest all year round. We're constantly harvesting. We'll do 3 harvests a week, and we just continually just go through the field and do it. But I'm kind of interested for Erik, I guess, we talked to some people in Louisiana, and I'm kind of interested in how both of you guys juice, for example, too. But one of the struggles that we've had is, okay, now that we finally figured out how to harvest this stuff, juicing becomes sort of an issue, and how efficiently can you juice? And there's no small scale juicers, because everything was the size of, your living room before, and there would be, mills that are 2 acres big. And so I know in Louisiana, there's a little bit more family style farms. So I assume you can take advantage of that in Georgia. But that to me is a big challenge, is just getting equipment that's sort of the right size and processes in place that are the right size for companies our size. So like, are you guys just once a year, correct, Erik? And then so you don't have to deal with all the juice, then you turn it into a syrup to preserve it, correct?
We ferment as much as possible, as much as we can, to the extent that the wine is the fermented wine is storable. And the rest is the vast majority is condensed into syrup. The challenge that we've had, of course, is that no one had been growing sugarcane in this area since the late 1800s.
Right.
And so there's large or small, there's no infrastructure, there's no knowledge, there's no know-how, there's no history, there's nothing to relate to. The whole farming industry focuses on peanuts and cotton, corn, pecans.
What's funny is our very first juicer was a little 3-roller that we actually got from Georgia. And we called people up in Georgia, and they sent us this mill from the 1800s, and they thought we were crazy. Like, what do you want this? What do you want this thing for? But we actually had to go to you guys to try and figure out how to get the sugarcane juice.
Yeah, the Columbus Iron Works used to make small crushers, but of a size that were designed to be driven by mules. Had 2 arms with 2 mules walking around, and so that's all very small scale. And we have a couple of them just to demonstrate to people. Every fall when we harvest, we use a couple of those, now driven by an electromotor. And people can come in and, stick in their own stalks and say, and drink a little bit of sugarcane juice. But because the infrastructure wasn't here, the history wasn't here, looked around. I even went to Puerto Rico, Pepe, to see if I could find anything there. closest, of course, Louisiana, and ended up buying a crusher in India, which is driven by a diesel engine. And that thing runs from mid-November through mid to the end of December, 24/7. And we crush everything we have. Ferment goes from the crusher into totes, ferment, and store as much as we can to have a true, what would be the local equivalent of an agricole. And the rest of the juice is condensed to syrup.
Yeah, and the subtext there and it's not obvious to anybody, is this juice is extremely volatile. So it's usually a matter of hours. If you let it sit around for a matter of hours, it's already on its way to being fermented. Yep. And if it's not your yeast, it's bacteria or wild yeast or a combination of and it's ruined in no time. So it's unlike other distilleries where heating is part of the process, which cleans it by killing all the bacteria and giving you a fresh start. It's really difficult to deal with that. And I think that was our biggest challenge, was trying to figure out, how do we turn this super delicious juice into a really good fermentation and to be able to control it.
Yeah, and do it. That's what we do instantly. It flows from the crusher to fermentation tanks directly.
Erik, there's a question that came in that I feel like now is a good time to throw it in. This is from, they just have the initial Z. So Z is asking, with close field proximity, would Richland consider an annual harvest release of an unaged cane juice agricultural rum? Just a batch or two at harvest time. So it sounds like you're allowing some of the juice to ferment. Is that what goes into your unaged product, or is that also made from cane syrup as well?
No, whatever we have made or are making every year directly from juice is bottled as a virgin rum to really bring out or really let the vegetal experience be as powerful as possible. And we actually do what Z is suggesting, only it's been on a very small scale, trickled in to sales in the two distillery. We have two distilleries.
So Z's not on that mailing list, huh?
Z should jump on the website and follow that, because it is sold in the two distillery stores as long as it is available. Usually in the course of the year, it's gone. And
you sell cane syrup as well, right?
Yeah, we do, and more so. We see more and more restaurants that are fanatical about it. In some cases, they ban sugar from their kitchen and only use this syrup, which has no additives. The only thing it has seen is heat. That's all.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's part of the fun of making the agricole. Is if once you get the process figured out and you really learn how to control it, is that there's nothing. You add nothing to it. There's no colors, no flavors, no sugars. It's just the expression of the juice itself. And so it's kind of like golf. When you get that one swing, you're hooked for life. It's just very similar to that.
Yeah, and that is what actually probably we share that. That is what makes it very gratifying to be able to show a bottle of rum and say, hey, the only two ingredients in here are sugarcane juice and water. Literally, there's nothing else in there. No other anything has been added.
And I want to make sure, I know we're almost at an hour here, and we've got some really good questions, some of which are kind of dovetailing with a few of the questions I had left for you guys. And this is an interesting one because I know, I think I've spoken to you about each of this, and I know you each have, arrived at different conclusions for how you do this. But we had a question asking, should distilleries from non-French speaking areas use the word agricole for cane juice rums or use a local term for agricultural rum? So I know you've all obviously thought a lot about this, and I'm interested just to kind of, for each of you to share your experience in deciding how you figured out what to call your rum. Erik, you want to jump in?
I can be very brief about it. We never do that. The term agricole is protected within a French jurisdiction, And we call our rum pure sugarcane juice rum. And that's it.
We battled with the idea of calling it agricole, ron agricole. It would be a mix of two languages. I personally feel that agricole is not a protected word. It means agricultural in French. What is registered and there's rights to it is rum agricole, rum with an H, agricole of Martinique, and other islands maybe do have the word registered. But for someone in the States, for example, to try to privatize or claim the right to use the word agriculture, it would be preposterous. Anyway, I didn't want to get into that pickle, and I made a few calls. I even spoke to Will to see his opinion about it. And I decided to call it ron agricola, so no one can. And I even got some feedback saying, but you're using the word agricola. And I said, but this is Puerto Rico, this is in Spanish. But still, you're using the term agriculture. I said, one has to be very careful here, but we call we've named it ron agricola because we're in Puerto Rico. It's ron pepon. Ron is rum. And we feel proud, and I feel that the best thing I could have done was to go with ron agricola and feel very proud of it.
And we went all the way. So we actually call one of our rums, we call it Hawaiian rum agricole. And for us, the decision was there's a lot of confusion with rum, and there's a lot of things that happen with rum that make it difficult for consumers to actually unwind what's actually going on with it. And so our intention is let's sort of normalize on something that most of the world understands and has direct meaning for them. And then, of course, we use the word Hawaiian right in front of it to show them that this is how we're doing it in Hawaii.
I use single estate. Means it comes field to glass from one house, right? And leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, all three different perspectives. I think that's probably something that we'll continue to talk about just because I think the category of rums from fresh sugarcane juice, we're seeing more and more of it. Obviously, there are a lot of people all over the world in trying to kind of spread it, get more people to get excited about what's a wonderful category of rum. So something that I think will be an ongoing conversation for sure. But thank you for the question. That one was from Z as well. Here's another question for you, Erik. This one is from Jer Anderson up in Minnesota. Jer asks, Erik, do you notice flavor differences with rum produced from different depletion times? Meaning, as you deplete your syrup, does rum created from the early portions taste different than rum from the later portions?
Yeah, we get that question often, and apparently that's based on experiences that may corroborate that. We haven't noticed that. There is a difference between varieties. Rum does have terroir. There is a difference in seasons. We've had different experiences with the same variety in over 2 different years, but the differences caused by the time of storage, we've never noticed that, and also have never noticed a discernible difference in the constitution of the syrup. I have saved syrup probably since 2001 or 2002 or so, just to see how it stays, how it preserves. And given the high sugar content, it's condensed to about 80 bricks. Natural sugars are the best known natural preservatives to mankind. The rum or the syrup doesn't change unless you allow lots of air to it. And it will crystallize, it will do all sorts of things. But this is stored without any access to air. And I have never noticed any change. Can you guys, Pepe or Steve, have any views on that?
Well, for us, it's fresh juice 3 times a week. So we do notice the difference between the varietals. We'll notice difference between climates. So, for example, people on the mainland will laugh at us, but the difference between winter and summer, it could be, maybe 10 degrees difference at the farm. And so the juice will come in for example, right around, this time of the year in the last few months, it comes in a little cooler. So maybe in the 70s. So what we'll find is that we'll get our fermentation period might last, 50% longer because there's just not quite the same amount of energy in the pot. So it'll be very subtle differences like that we notice. But because we're always starting with fresh juice and the process is always the same, it's different for us. But every batch tastes different. And every batch, we have a weekly process where we call it sensory, and about 6 to 8 of us will get together and we'll taste every single run that we've ever done. And then we usually put 3 or 4 of them together in order to come out with a product that is very similar to the standard that we have. And to be honest, if it doesn't meet our standard, then we don't bottle it.
So you're kind of blending a little bit to achieve more consistency then? For
our primary Hawaiian rum agricole product. And then, of course, we're hinting at, so we're also working on a program where we do single varietal rums that really express the difference between the different canes, because we're lucky to have, these 40 different varieties of sugar canes, and some of them are extremely unique in both flavor and how they look. And so we're working on a way of really showing the differences between those as well. And some of those will be quite rare.
Nice.
Excellent. And Pepe, I wanted to give you a chance to speak to that as well. How much difference do you notice kind of, maybe throughout the year, or seasonal changes in the distillate you get?
We cultivate sugarcane year long because weather permits it, and it grows year long. But we do have a rainy season, which is from May to December. And then we have a dry season from January to May. Traditionally, sugarcane in the Caribbean was grown aggressively during those wet months, so it would aggressively grow. We've broken that mold, and we're planting sugarcane all year long and cultivating sugarcane all year long. The difference is that when you get lots of water, your water content in the stock will increase and your sugar level will decrease. So when you cultivate sugarcane during the dry season, you'll get a much sweeter, more concentrated of sugar, because it's like everything in the other fruits that we buy, that we use in other products that we make. If we process mangoes or pineapples or other fruits during the rainy season, they taste completely different than if they're cultivated during the dry season. So water has a lot to do with it. And right now we've had a dry spell, and the concentration of the sugar in the juice is high. But as soon as it starts raining now in May, we'll see that it'll change. We have our mill processes 3 tons of sugarcane per hour, and so we go through sugarcane pretty fast. And we do have a pasteurizer where we deposit our sugarcane after 3 different filtration systems. We deposit in a tank that is supposed to then go through a pasteurizer to kill the wild yeast and bacteria. We've never used it because we feel that it'll take away so much flavors and terroir and all the good things you want in the juice. And the way we mitigated that is pitching in the yeast. We pass immediately the juice to the tanks, and we feed the yeast immediately. So our good yeast will take over the fermentation and not allow the wild yeast to take over. So basically, that's the way we've been doing it so far, and I think we'll keep sticking to that.
Yeah, I got a nerdy question, if I can, for Pepe. So 3 tons per hour. What's the juice that's coming out? What's that? How much juice are you producing?
Our mill produces extract. We have our sugarcane is traditionally about 50% is bagasse and 50% is water. So our mill system, we have a single mill. We were going to install a double mill system to do a double extraction. And that would give you maybe 5 or 8% more juice. So we felt, the mill was one of the last things we installed. So we, for budget reasons, we decided to do a single mill. We don't add anything to the juice. We don't dilute it with anything. We ferment our juice just as it comes out of the mill. And I'd say we get about 40% juice out of the 100% of the weight of the cane.
By weight, okay. Yeah, so what we found is we can get 70 to 80% juice, but it takes a lot of effort in the milling in order to do that. So you might have to, that might be 2 or 3 runs to actually get.
Yeah, we milled it just once, and there's still juice in the bagasse, but it would be so much work. And it's a big volume. We process about 20 tons a day. So it's almost impossible to redo all that bagasse. So what we're planning on doing in the near future, one of the expansions we have, because we've fallen in love with the whole process, is to add another mill. And then what we do is we rehydrate the bagasse. Once it's pressed, we rehydrate it with a little bit of sugarcane juice that we've pressed out. We don't want to add water. The traditional way is to rehydrate the bagasse with clean water, and you press it again, and then your sugar levels drop. So we would rehydrate once more and then press it through a second mill. That's the project we have in our plans. And also, right now we have a table where we feed this big, 8 feet by 8 feet table, and we pull the sugarcane down to the conveyor that goes into the shredding machine, and then that goes up a conveyor that feeds the mill. We're also installing a automated new table that will raise itself and will have like these mechanical features or legs that pushes the cane towards the feeding conveyor to the shredder, then to the shredded cane into the mill.
It's all about milling, it turns out.
A lot is. Yeah. We're seeing also about 50% or so.
It's about 50% is the accurate number. Yeah, in our part. To do it twice is a lot of effort. I mean, for us, it's impossible to manage. So we need to improve on the milling side to create a more efficient extraction method. It's all natural. It's a nice milling system. It works fine.
So I wanted to point out to everyone, I just shared some links to all of your distilleries' websites in the chat. And one thing I wanted to be sure to ask all of you guys, because I know it's been anything but a normal year in terms of, doing tours and visitors and stuff like that. But if anyone is interested in, or they're going to, be in the area, or maybe they live nearby, are you able to do tours right now? What does that look like? How much of the, sugarcane process can people experience if they come and visit you?
We're fully open, both distilleries in Richland and Brunswick for tours. The tasting rooms are open. The gift shops are open. We do organize tours of the farm in the fall, October and November.
And Pepe, what about you?
Yeah, we had started doing tours last year, and immediately they were shut down. I feel that the part of being able to attract visitors and having the whole concept of the agricultural distillery, aging room, the sugarcane, the milling, everything all together is a great experience. And we've seen the models from all the wineries throughout the world and all the distilleries throughout the world that they all have their visiting programs. It's proven to be a huge business, and it helps in many ways to pay other bills that need to be paid. And it also, I feel that it generates a feeling of ambassadorship of everyone that goes through here, that once they leave our facilities, they become your ambassadors, and that's what we want. We treat them really well. They're our ambassadors, and we treat them like family and make them feel welcome. And we're doing a little bit of food pairings with rums and a little bit of chocolate and this and that, inventing stuff all the time. And it's interesting. We don't take our focus away from our main reason of being, of course, which is a distillery. But it is something that you have all the elements, you have all the tools already there. So right now we just hosted a tour about an hour and a half ago. Now we have another group of 8 persons walking through the whole distillery. We take our time. We take about 2 hours to show them around. We welcome them with a drink. We try to make them have fun, to laugh and enjoy themselves. And we give them a little bit of our history, the history of sugarcane and rum in Puerto Rico, and what we're doing. Basically, we walk through the sugarcane field, walk back, walk through the distillery. They see everything, all the wheels in motion. We come back to the visitor center. We do a full tasting of everything. And I mean, they can go into the little gift shop that we have. They can buy product, they can buy whatever they like, and it's really fun. It's a fun experience.
For us, we actually opened we have a 3,000 square foot bar and restaurant. So we started off with just, we want to have the full experience immediately. And to Pepe's point, it's really marketing. And so you have to be careful because you can't be losing money on your, restaurants are great ways to lose money if you don't operate them properly. And it's really easy to lose a lot of money in a restaurant quickly. Fortunately, we've got a team that's good at it. The guy that's in charge of our hospitality program actually ran it for High West. And so when High West was sold to Constellation, we immediately not only brought the CEO over as one of our advisors and board members, but also the head of operations as well. And so we concentrate on that. We do probably between 75,000 and 100,000 people a year will come through the program. And to Pepe's point, it's just that is the best way for people to really experience it, to really try it, to really understand what we're doing it, to feel the love from the people that are working hard on us and just really get a flavor for, the island and what we're trying to do. And so it's a lot of work, but it's very gratifying. And then we also have a tour program where people can sign up. That's just starting to open up again because of COVID, but where we have a tour company will actually come and take you to the farm, and then you go to see the cane, see it growing, see the ocean, Maui, and all that. Try the cane in the field, drink some juice, and then we'll take them to the distillery where they can actually try the fermentation. By the way, the fermentation is delicious, and I'm sure it's the case with both of you guys as well. You could drink this as beer all day long.
Free product
from
idea.
There. Yeah, well, I'm sure we've all had that idea already. So, and then we take them down to the Rum Shack where they can enjoy it as a cocktail and lunch as well, and do tastings and as well. And we're about to open up another about 800 square foot space to do a private tasting room.
So final question. This one comes in from Alan Fowler. Great question. Maybe a tough one to answer, but I'm sure you've all thought about this a lot. He wants to know, what is your favorite tasting profile or characteristic in each of your own rums? Maybe you could point to one thing about it that you love. What would that be?
Well, I'm not on mute, so I'll start. For us, what's really exciting about our sugar canes that I like is the fact that, these have been cultivated by humans for human consumption as a sugarcane plant. So these weren't designed for industry. They weren't designed to extract sugar. They were designed literally as fruit, if you will, so they could just be eaten. And so there's a lot of wonderful flavors in a lot of these sugar canes. And for us, the challenge is to get those to come forward. So what I like to taste in our rum a lot is we get I like to call it stone fruit, but like cherry type flavors, which sounds sort of almost counterintuitive when you're thinking about a white rum that hasn't been aged or anything. We get a lot of different sort of banana variations. So anywhere from banana leaf to very sweet banana to plantains, a lot of pineapple flavors and some slightly more exotic things like lemongrass and things like that. So there's a lot of depth and a lot of sort of different fruit flavors that come forward that we really look forward to. And then the other thing that we really like is we strive for a very long finish in our white agricole. We want it to last. We call it everlasting gobstopper, if anybody's ever seen the Willy Wonka movies, but we want it to last for about 14 weeks. And that's something that you can actually do with this. And even though there's no sugar in the liquid, it feels so rich and wonderful. And so that's really what we're going for.
Pepe, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, something that we've started developing an inclination, and we've noticed there's an amazing interest throughout Puerto Rico and the U.S. and everybody that contacts us and tries our products is going more towards our white rum, because the white rum, you'll get all these herbal notes, you'll get the terroir, you'll get all these flavors that disappear once you just throw your rum into a barrel. You're interacting with 357 different elements that would impart into the product. And after a while, although aged agricole rums I love and I personally enjoy them immensely. I really like them a lot. I've been starting to tinker with, experimenting with the white rums and doing the famous tea punch, which is a legendary original agricole drink of the people who invented this thing. And it's an incredible flavors that comes out of these tea punch. And so we're basically, my son enjoys white rum as well, very, very much. We are our aged rums are extraordinary as well, and we are in the process of aging. We're aging about half of what we produce and bottling white about half of what we produce. And it's amazing how strong white rum, because of all the original notes of the sugarcane juice. Yeah, all these flavors, all these grassy flavors that and smelling notes that come out of this fresh pressed sugarcane juice rum.
It's really, really great to hear. And one of the advantages of what you did here is bringing us together. I would really appreciate staying in touch with you guys, because there's a lot that we can exchange and learn from each other. Absolutely. But what we enjoy is the fact that the rum made from the sugarcane here has definitely the grassy agricole notes, hints of field flowers, vegetal tones, even some hints of vanilla without the funkiness. Way back when I first tried Grandpa's agricoles,
the collection,
and also traveled to the French islands, and I thought that was absolutely beautiful and lived as if I could ever achieve that. Now I'm arrogant enough to say that after 20 years of producing here, 21, I like this better. The terroir is better. It doesn't have the funkiness, and we bottle it at full strength to bring it out, and it's very successful. I'm very jealous of you guys. Our intermediate step to syrup does make a difference, and you can really say it's not original or it's worse or better. You don't have to attach a value judgment to it, but condensing the juice into syrup and then ferment and distill creates a different product. It's just noticeably different. So the portion that we make directly from fresh juice out of the crusher into a fermenter has these notes that I just described without the funkiness. There's some fruitiness, there's some grapefruit in there. It's beautiful. And to your earlier point, Pepe, to use that for an old-fashioned tea punch serving is just fantastic. It's great.
Yeah, I would say the best thing to do if you're watching is to try to get your hands on some. I know it can always be a little difficult with distribution and things like that. But I put the links to the websites up, and I know you each have information on the best ways to find your products and things like that. So strongly encourage everyone to check that out. But thank you guys so much for giving 90 minutes of your time today. I feel like these could always, go for 3 hours or so. Anytime we get a group of distillers together, it's always fun. So we really appreciate it. Anything to add or that we didn't get to before we go? And by the way, Z wrote into the chat, unaged cane juice rums are the best. So sounds like he's on the same wavelength.
Yeah. It's funny. It's as following on that, it's really interesting that unaged rum, especially in agricole, are becoming so popular. And what I'm finding is spirits people aficionados try it because it's so different and so to the essence of what a spirit can actually be about that we're surprised by the reaction that we get at the Rum Shack, to be totally honest. We have one product that it's a take of the T punch. We call it a high punch. So HI punch instead of TI punch. And it's just room temperature agricole in a glass with a half of a passion fruit. We call it lilikoi here, and a little bit of fresh cane syrup from our own farm. And it's a deconstructed daiquiri, if you will. You can do whatever you want with it, but we're really surprised that, more people than not just drink the agricole all by itself, all age groups, genders, you name it. So it's really fun to watch that. And then we just, we entered a spirits competition. I know these guys have accolades, out the wazoo, but the San Francisco World, they gave us a gold medal. So the point is that people love agricoles now. And I really think this is, an exciting time to be there. And this is a sort of a really fun and unique product because it's not about the barrel.
Being made in the U.S. and being made like by us in Puerto Rico, by you in Hawaii and you in Georgia is something that has become like a grassroots movement to support local distilleries. People are fascinated with trying out a small batch, small production, high quality stuff that is made within the country, which is super interesting. Imported stuff. We get bombarded from imported stuff from all over the world. I think it's phenomenal that all this support is coming from every direction.
Yeah, and Dave Russell, by the way, in the chat noted such diversity among the 3 distilleries, yet all on the same subject. So yeah, that's what I love about this is 3 producers, all in the same country, but all coming to it from totally different perspectives, different environments, everything about it, and you get the for me as a consumer, it's a great thing because it's more interesting, amazing products to try. And Brad Krause in the chat as well, who's down in Panama. He says we make rum from raspadura, which is concentrated cane juice, definitely more cane character than molasses. So it sounds like that might be kind of similar to like the cane syrup that you're working with, Erik.
Raspadura is a dehydrated. It's more like a dehydrated panela.
Oh, okay. So this would be like crystallized. Okay. Yeah. So different from syrup then.
Yeah. So basically, you take a piece of that and you dilute it, and it turns. It's dehydrated to a point where it becomes like a cake, a piece of of solid sugar.
It shows all the possibilities because that in and of itself creates a very different character.
Right.
Yeah. And it's probably wonderful.
And like you said, Erik, you mentioned, so often we try to attach value statements to different cane substrates and things like that. But I think what's great is just they're all different at the end of the day. The juice is wonderful. The aged rums you guys make from the cane syrup, I'm a big fan of. I think they're great on their own in an entirely different way and experience. So the more the better from my perspective. So
yeah, and to Erik's point, I don't mean we actually have a blending program where we make rums from all kinds of rums that we found around the world as well. So we love rum agricole, but we love all rum, whether it's made from molasses or dehydrated syrup or syrups. We love it all. Yeah, we'll put on the label what the fermentation source was, so people can see that. But that's our goal, is to share all this fantastic stuff with everybody. So sorry,
that's what it's all about, right? Just be straightforward about what the product is.
Absolutely.
I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, there are very good, very beautiful molasses rums.
They are amazing molasses.
Extraordinary,
extraordinary molasses rum. They're just a different profile. And there's some incredible molasses rum. I agree.
But many of them try to obfuscate that by hinting through all sorts of ways that it is not molasses, that it is fresh juice rum, which is not true. And then it's a pity that there are value judgments associated with it. It's just a different product, and the craftsmanship behind it determines what the outcome is. What I like about this combination of being a farmer and a distiller is making a field to glass product, number one. And number two, have no additives. 0.0 additives.
Yeah.
What you grow goes into a bottle. And with the use of water. But that's it. And purity and authenticity. You don't have to develop a brand that talks about the spirit of the wild horses that roam the area and so forth.
We like horses, though.
We do. We have a Mustang sanctuary at the farm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, just be authentic. And
right.
Authenticity, as far as I'm concerned, reigns. And
I think that's the thinking that's going to let rum premiumize. I think that's the thinking that's already happened. A lot of work's been put into place to be honest and straightforward about rum, and I think that's why rum is really starting to take off. Is that people are realizing that this is one of the most interesting spirits categories, not the most, how it has been in the past.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that it has developed such a bad reputation. And if you use a bad grade mill molasses, you have to distill up to 150 proof or so to get rid of all the contaminants. And now you have almost pure ethanol. Ethanol is ethanol and tastes like ethanol. It's no longer rum. And then you have to reflavor it to make it taste like rum.
Something,
Then you write on it pure cane juice, sugar, and so forth. And you buy it for $6.99 for $7.50. That is what's given rum a bad reputation, and it's so bad, and that's why Grandpa inspired me. That if you do it well in an artisanal way, you have a beautiful product. Not a mixer. A pure, like you just said earlier, Steve. I mean, just pour a little bit of fresh rum. Straight from the still, undiluted, in a glass, without ice, and enjoy it. It's beautiful. It's very complex, and it's beautiful.
By the way, Erik, on that note, I'm going to be seeing my grandmother soon for the first time in a while. Her parents immigrated from the Netherlands originally. My dad's whole side of the family is from the Netherlands. And I never got to share in with some amazing collection of agricole rum. So, I feel like I missed out a little bit there.
Well, make sure that when you are in Holland, that you make it stop at Scheer.
Yes.
Scheer.
I've interviewed Karsten and Niels from E&A Scheer before, so that's at the top of my list when I eventually get over there someday.
They've got quite a collection.
Largest rum traders in the world since the 1700s, and fantastic people, super delightful, informative, open people.
Yeah, that's always been my experience in talking with them as well. So, again, thank you, all of you guys. Pepe, I think you mentioned you have a tour going on, so I don't want to keep you from your guests too much longer.
But it's fine. I've had an immense pleasure meeting you guys. Will, thank you so much for doing this. Erik, a real pleasure. Steve, the same. We're here, and open house policy. You're invited anytime you want. And
Same here, guys.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. No, it was a slightly different episode than usual, but rest assured that interview I mentioned that it's getting a little bit postponed will be back soon enough to our regular scheduled programming. In the meantime, as always, please let us know what you think of the show. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts is a great way to do that. Helps other people discover the show, and we always appreciate it. If you have any questions or anything, any topics you want us to cover, feel free to send us an email, host@rumcast.com. We love getting emails from you guys, host@rumcast.com. And there's also social media, this new thing online that I've heard about called social media. You can find us at the Rumcast. At Rumcast? What is it, John?
At the Rumcast, Will.
Okay.
It's at the Rumcast, either Facebook or Instagram. And actually, we had a really cool person reach out to us on Instagram recently. I know we're bound by our English language, and we do have quite a few of our listeners are in the U.S., but we have a worldwide audience.
That's right.
And there was one user, rumgirl_CZ. She contacted us recently, and she actually speaks Czech.
Wow.
But she listens to our podcast, and she said she's learning English.
That's amazing.
So I thought that was really, really cool. And so I asked her to figure out how we would say in Czech, thank you for listening. So I'm going to attempt to do that right now in
I'm glad
Czech
you have the courage for this. Go for it.
For the first time. And I want to tell Rum Girl CZ, thank you so much. And I'm going to say it in Czech. It's Děkuji za poslech.
That sounded great. I have no knowledge of Czech, but I just have this feeling like you nailed it. So good job for stepping up and, going out on a limb there. I love it.
Totally nailed it. And that's the Dunning-Kruger effect right there. So thank you so much for all of you for worldwide for listening. And please do let us know what it is that you want to hear us talk about. If there are other subjects, reach out to us on social, reach out to us like Will said on an email, and let us know what you like, what you want to hear more of, and leave that 5 stars. We would really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much, and we will see you on the next episode.